Iranian troops are on the move. August 14, 2025. In the black waters of the Pacific, a silent fleet cuts toward the Oregon coast, convinced they are unseen. But above them, an American eye has been watching, and the countdown to slaughter has already begun. The final seconds of the countdown were over. At 0446, a flotilla of 30 Iranian amphibious assault ships surged through the pre-dawn gloom, their bows cleaving the dark water 180 nautical miles off the American mainland. This was no mere probing force. It was the sharp point of a spear, carrying a formidable invasion contingent designed for shock and awe. On board, secured in the cavernous holds of the transport vessels, was the heavy armor of the assault. 120 Khorrar main battle tanks and 60 armored personnel carriers, their engines cold but their fuel tanks full. With them were 500 of Iran's most elite naval commandos, each man a veteran of coastal raiding and asymmetric warfare. Their objective was a quiet, unassuming fishing town on the Oregon coast, identified by Tehran's intelligence as America's softest, most vulnerable defensive point. The mission was brutally simple: land, seize a beachhead, and establish a fortified forward operating base before the United States could mount a coherent response. Behind this brazen act of aggression was a desperate, high-stakes gamble. Years of crippling international sanctions had bled Iran's economy dry, forcing the regime in Tehran into a desperate, audacious gamble. The attack was conceived as a high-stakes breakout, a shocking, asymmetrical move designed to shatter the global status quo and prove unequivocally that Iran could project lethal force across the globe, touching the American homeland itself. Oregon's remote and rugged coastline was chosen with cold, calculating precision. Far from the major naval bases of San Diego and Bremerton, it was perceived as a strategic seam in the nation's continental defenses, a blind spot that could be exploited by a swift and secret amphibious assault. The entire plan, from its inception in the highest echelons of the IRGC to its execution in the lonely waters of the Pacific, rested on a single, fundamental, and ultimately fatal illusion. But what Iran believed was impenetrable secrecy was a second-by-second countdown to annihilation, tracked by a network of unseen guardians. That illusion was about to be shattered. At 0512, in the dimly lit, climate-controlled confines of the U.S. Pacific Fleet's command center in Hawaii, the atmosphere was one of profound, electric stillness. On the main tactical display, a wall-sized screen painting a god's-eye view of the ocean, 30 hostile red icons moved in a disciplined, unwavering formation. Moments before, they had slipped across an invisible, pre-designated line in the water, a geo-fenced perimeter known only to the planners of Operation Black Tide. By crossing it, the Iranian fleet had entered a 770-square nautical mile death box. Inside this box, a layered and fully integrated defense of submarines, destroyers, long-range bombers, and high-altitude stealth drones lay in patient ambush, all networked, all synchronized, and all ready to unleash hell on a single command. The admiral commanding the operation stood before the screen, his face illuminated by the cold blue light of the digital map. Every tactical instinct, honed over 30 years of naval warfare, screamed at him to strike early, to shatter the enemy flotilla before it came a mile closer. But the operational parameters were strict, demanding absolute, surgical patience. This was not to be a battle, it was to be an execution. The trap had to be sprung perfectly, with no gaps for retreat, no holes in the kill web, and no possibility of escape for any organized unit. He waited, his eyes locked on the screen as the lead enemy vessel, the fleet's flagship, reached the mathematically optimal firing solution. The seconds stretched into an eternity, each tick of the clock a testament to military discipline. Targeting solutions were confirmed across every platform: air, surface, and subsurface. The final checks were green. The admiral leaned forward, his voice calm, clear, and utterly final in the hushed command center. The admiral's order unleashed 3 layers of destruction, already waiting to strike. The single word to execute rippled outward in less than a second, through a web of secure, redundant, satellite-linked data links. It was not a call to arms, but the throwing of a switch, activating a tri-axis assault of overwhelming and instantaneous violence. 3 distinct layers of destruction, long primed and held in silent readiness, were unleashed to converge on the unsuspecting fleet. First, from the silent darkness above, 80 MQ-25 Stingray drones, loitering in a lazy, unseen orbit at 40,000 feet, had been the operation's primary eyes. Now, they became its first fist. Their weapon bays snapped open, ready to release a payload of Stormbreaker smart bombs, each one a 200-pound package of advanced guidance and concentrated destruction, more than enough to shatter the flotilla's spine. They were the silent reapers, waiting for the signal to harvest the souls below. Second, from the crushing pressure of the depths, the USS North Dakota, a Virginia-class nuclear attack submarine, had been the fleet's phantom shadow for the last 48 hours. Running deep and utterly silent, it had tracked every course correction, logged every communication attempt, and mapped the exact position of every vessel. Now, its mission shifted from intelligence to annihilation. In its torpedo room were heavyweight Mach 48 torpedoes, designed not merely to punch a hole in a warship, but to detonate beneath its keel and break its back. In its vertical launch tubes were 12 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each one a land attack weapon repurposed for a devastating anti-ship role. Third, from the land itself, hidden in the dense, fog-shrouded temperate rainforests of the Oregon coastline, 2 mobile batteries of the Navy Marine Expeditionary Ship Interdiction System, NMESIS, powered up their launchers. Unmanned and remotely operated, these hunter-killer platforms were armed with a total of 24 RGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. They were the final gatekeepers, a sea-skimming 500-pound sledgehammer programmed to obliterate any survivors who managed to break through the initial onslaught and attempt a desperate dash for the shore. The Iranian fleet, still sailing in its perfect disciplined formation, remained blissfully, suicidally unaware. Their radar screens showed nothing but empty ocean and random sea clutter. Their lookouts scanned a vacant horizon. They had no idea that in the next 60 seconds, their world would be torn apart from above, below, and ahead by over 100 tons of American high explosives. The noose had tightened. The trap was sprung. From the weapon bays of the circling drones, the first wave of Stormbreaker bombs descended in absolute, terrifying silence. For the Iranian crews below, the attack began not with a warning siren or a radar alarm, but with the instantaneous, apocalyptic destruction of their lead ships. The bombs, guided by a sophisticated trinity of infrared, millimeter-wave radar, and semi-active laser guidance, were impossible to detect and impossible to jam. They pierced the reinforced steel decks of the warships as if they were made of paper. On the flagship, a tungsten penetrator core designed for hardened targets vaporized the command staff on the bridge in a flash of white heat, before a secondary delayed action charge detonated deep within the communications hub, instantly silencing the fleet's brain and severing its central nervous system. Aboard a lumbering tank carrier, 2 bombs struck the main deck in quick succession, the first igniting the fuel lines of the war machines chained below. The vessel's interior became a superheated pressure cooker for 3 catastrophic seconds until the entire midsection erupted in a volcanic blast, launching a flaming 60-ton tank turret 1,000 feet into the night sky. The once disciplined formation dissolved into pure pandemonium. Alarms shrieked across the water as captains, suddenly deprived of command and control, swerved their vessels violently to avoid the sinking, burning hulks of their comrades. This chaotic, panicked maneuvering turned them into perfect targets, their dark hulls now silhouetted against the spreading fires of the dying. The second drone wave was not for annihilation, but for castration. Another volley of bombs rained down, a sharp and vicious follow-up strike. This time, they were not aimed at sinking the ships, but at ensuring they could neither fight nor flee. The bombs shattered exposed engines, severed hydraulic rudder lines, and sheared off radar and communication masts, leaving the vessels to drift helplessly, crippled and burning in the dark. As fire and chaos raged on the surface, a new predator struck from below. The USS North Dakota, now positioned perfectly amidst the confusion, launched 4 heavyweight torpedoes. They did not strike the hulls directly. Their sensors were programmed for a far more brutal purpose. They sped beneath their targets and detonated directly under the keels. A massive, supercavitating gas bubble from the first torpedo's explosion lifted an entire 5,000-ton transport ship clear out of the water. Suspended for a horrifying moment in the air, with no support from the sea, the vessel's own immense weight became its executioner. Its keel snapped with a deafening metallic groan of tearing metal, and the ship broke cleanly in half. Its bow and stern pointed grotesquely toward the sky for one final, horrifying moment before plunging separately into the abyss. In under 3 minutes, 22 Iranian ships were either destroyed, mortally wounded, or left dead in the water. For the terrified survivors, now scattering into the darkness, escape seemed possible, but their flight was only just beginning. For the survivors, escape seemed possible, until the coastline itself came alive. The 8 surviving Iranian ships were in a full, panicked retreat, their only thought to escape the hell that had materialized out of the seemingly empty ocean. They had fled one death zone only to sail directly into another. Their desperate flight had taken them into the heart of the Harpoon engagement envelope. The coastline itself came alive. From concealed, camouflaged positions on the Oregon coast, a salvo of Harpoon missiles erupted in a cloud of fire and smoke, dropping low to skim mere feet above the churning waves, their radar seekers hunting for targets. The first missiles slammed into 6 of the fleeing ships almost simultaneously, One struck a frigate's stern, its 500-pound warhead turning 10,000 gallons of diesel fuel into a rolling liquid inferno that consumed the ship from the inside out. Another penetrated 2 bulkheads of a transport before detonating inside a hold packed with tank ammunition. The resulting sympathetic detonation was absolute, vaporizing the ship's entire center section and leaving only a flaming bow and a sinking stern to slide separately into the sea. From the depths, 2 Tomahawk missiles, launched by the North Dakota, breached the surface on pillars of white water, their booster rockets igniting with a roar before they too dropped to the waves, arcing toward the 2 remaining command ships that were attempting to coordinate the retreat. They didn't just hit their targets, they annihilated them. One was struck with such overwhelming kinetic force that its armored deck peeled open like a tin can, the superstructure collapsing inward before the hull capsized and vanished in under a minute. Above the escalating carnage, the MQ-25 drones, their bomb bays now empty, became ruthless hunters. Switching to their secondary armament of Hellfire missiles, they began a methodical and clinical cleanup operation. With cold precision, they targeted the remaining assault boats and inflatable life rafts being launched from the sinking ships, ensuring that no organized military force, no matter how small, would ever reach the shore. The sea, which minutes before had been the avenue for their secret invasion, was now their grave. In under 6 minutes, the sea was theirs no longer. Only wreckage remained. The last organized Iranian vessel, a crippled transport burning from bow to stern, slipped beneath the waves. The entire combat phase had lasted just 5 minutes and 45 seconds. When the last flame died on the water and the final echo of explosions faded into the dawn, only a vast, iridescent oil slick and a sprawling field of drifting wreckage remained. 30 hulls were gone, their twisted steel now settling on the seabed 180 nautical miles offshore, a permanent silent monument to a fatal miscalculation. The United States had fired 344 precision weapons, bombs, torpedoes, and missiles, with each strike recorded, each impact decisive. Iran's great gamble to touch America had ended without a single enemy boot touching American sand. For hours, the sea had been theirs to command. Then, in an instant, it belonged to no one but the silent deep.